we have all had our fun with the Goonacide, all the memes, all the think pieces that make no sense. It's all been in well good fun. But despite that, and despite the serious conversations, there's a lot that's been going around that we haven't seen. And if you didn't know, there's a current law, or a bill, not a law, but a bill that's been proposed in the state known as Mississippi called the Contraception Begins at Erection Bill, which has been spurred on by a man by the name of Bradford Blackman, which is a great name. A Mississippi senator introduced a bill that would ban men from participating in certain sexual activities without the intent of fertilizing an embryo. For the lower IQ people, that means getting someone pregnant. The legislation was sponsored by Democratic State Senator Bradford Blackman, and here's what you need to know. The bill proposes to make it unlawful for a person to discharge genetic material, sperm, without the intent to fertilize an embryo, criminalizing certain male reproductive behaviors, essentially making it a crime to play with yourself. The legislation also includes two key exceptions: genetic material donated or sold to a facility for future embryo fertilization, and genetic material discharged using a contraceptive method intended to prevent fertilization. Additionally, the bill states that there will be fines for violations, starting with $1,000 for a penalty for the first offense, $5,000 for the second, and $10,000 for a third. What they're saying. In a statement provided to WLB-TV, State Senator Bradford Blackman said all across the country, especially here in Mississippi, the vast majority of bills relating to contraception and or abortion focus on the woman's role when men are 50% of the equation, which is true. This bill highlights that fact and brings the man's role into the conversation. People could get up in arms and call it absurd, but I can't say that bothers me. Blackman told Newsweek that the bill is meant to point out the double standard in legislation. When a bill has been filed that would regulate what a man is able to do with his own body in his own home, it suddenly has people in an uproar. I'm trying to figure out, when is it okay for the government to dictate what you can do in privacy of your own home? Apparently, it is when the law regulates men. If the bill is signed and passed by Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves, it would go into effect July 1st. And you know what? In a vacuum, I can understand this, because there's often conversation about abortion and all those things where we put all the stake on the women, but I'm not too confident in people's power in regards to regulating how one would actually go about finding out how you would know if someone played with themselves. How would you be able to find that out? Because I would think the only way is to monitor how one would actually go about searching things to relieve a little bit of stress off their body, because that would be the only way. Because other than that, you would have to put cameras at everybody's houses or monitor their hand movements or their blood pressure once things start rolling into pictures. Put a random BBL on the screen and see if people's heart rates go up. And if it goes up, that's an act of violence and against the law. You should be paying that $1,000 fine. However, this was a week ago, and you could imagine a lot of people had opinions about this. Some cheering it on, some people confused by the entire concept.
Mississippi lawmaker introduces the Contraception Begins at Erection Act. Mississippi State Senator Bradford Blackman introduced a bill this week that would ban men from that would ban men from masturbating or engaging in other sexual acts without an intent to fertilize an embryo. The bill, titled Contraception Begins at Erection Act, would make it unlawful for a person to discharge genetic materials without intent to fertilize an embryo. It's $1,000 for the first offense, and $5,000 for the second offense, and $10,000 for the third offense. If this bill passes, it gives the U.S. the opportunity to be out of debt within 3 months. In all seriousness, a law like this would never pass. Hats off to you, Bradford. Thanks for the reminder that there are still some decent politicians.
Not Mississippi done did some shit I would have never expected that motherfucker to do. They literally just filed a new law called Contraceptions Begin at Erection. This means that they are trying to pass a law where men will be fucking fined if they are continuously having unwanted pregnancies, because again, pregnancy and conception literally starts with the fucking man. And if this is not the epitome of seeing the downfall of single motherhood, I don't know what the fuck is. And I say this is so unexpected about Mississippi because Mississippi have the worst and poorest sex education. Like they literally, I quite literally remembering them banning sex education when I was in the 9th fucking grade. And they also probably do have the highest rate when it comes down to so many single mothers and yada, yada, yada. So y'all niggas better start wrapping the fuck up. I don't want to see nobody on this bitch consistently trying to blame women for the shit that women have been saying for fucking eons now. Pregnancy starts with the fucking man. And the minute all the other states get on board with this shit, the more that they probably wouldn't even have to worry about Roe versus Wade, because they are literally starting with the problem, which is the fucking man.
The reckless ejaculation bill in Mississippi is indeed a flawlessly executed troll. Yes, the word is contraception. If life begins at conception, then contraception should begin at erection. Get it? Senator Bradford Blackman released this cunty diva boots press statement today. The filing of this bill is to point out the double standards in legislation. You have male-dominated legislatures in Mississippi and all over the country that pass laws that dictate what a woman can and cannot do with her body. I was raised by strong parents that preached equality for all. My mother and my father both believe in equal rights for women. One of the reasons why this legislation is so important is that with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, it has not only impacted women's ability to get abortion care, but it has also affected women's ability to access basic gynecological care that includes contraceptive care. When a bill has been filed that would regulate what a man is able to do with his own body in his own home, it suddenly has people in an uproar. I am trying to figure out when it isn't okay for the government to dictate what you do in the privacy of your own home. Apparently, it is when the laws regulate men. Senator Blackman, you have made me an instant fan, and I'm sure millions of others, and thank you for this brave and witty work. I am proud to be from Mississippi, and it is not always easy to say that.
And some people deciding that they were very upset about this to the point where they started sending death threats to this man. And of course, it's led to further explanation. Black senator who's getting threats for his anti-masturbation bill explains why men need to calm down. Last week, Mississippi Senator Bradford Blackman introduced a bill that would theoretically ban men from masturbating or engaging in other sexual acts when they have no intent to fertilize the embryo. Now he claims that he's received death threats over the proposed legislation. Blackman, a first-term senator representing the district north of Jackson, told TMZ that men are so upset about his idea that they have left him vile messages. Some of those were threatening his life. Blackman also insisted that the bill wasn't serious, but folks clearly didn't pick up on his sense of humor. Stop right there. You can't sit here and talk about the double standards in legislation that clearly puts women in a bind and talk about how you need to start coming up with ideas that also lead men to be responsible in the devil's tango that ends up creating a baby or a stain on the bedsheet. And then once you get backlash, which I am not supporting because death threats, not the way to go about actual criticism or responding to things you don't like, you can't then say, oh, I'm just doing it as a sense of humor. Because out of all the people who are supposed to be having a comedic bone in their body, anyone who's a politician, senator, governor, you have the worst sense of humor, because anything you say, people are going to fear is an actual thing that's going to end up being in fucking law. There was a bill that was going to make it punishable with jail time in Texas for someone assisting someone to get an abortion. Not the doctor, but if you drove them somewhere, you could be arrested and jailed. It was outrageous, and the idea popped in my head, well, what if we decided that we want to regulate men? How would the reaction be? Well, you clearly saw it, and you don't like it. The senator then proposed the Contraception Begins at Erection Act, which would make it unlawful for a person to discharge genetic material without the intent to fertilize the embryo. The bill includes the exceptions for sperm donation and the use of contraception. We already read all this. Blackman said he knew it would ruffle some feathers, but he was not expecting widespread condemnation in the form of emails, voicemails, Instagram messages, and Facebook messages. He has reported the death threats to authorities. The bill is unlikely to pass the Republican-leaning legislature. However, if it does and is signed, it'll go into law in July 1st, blah, 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 blah. I don't like this idea because there's no thought behind it. You saw something and got mad and you thought to yourself, what if we flipped it on its head? And instead of coming up with an actual idea that could maybe be founded in some great conversation, you just went the unrealistic route. Hey, let me fine you for masturbating because, you shouldn't be doing that anyway. It's unhealthy on your body. It's unhealthy on your skin. It leads to that erectile dysfunction you got going on in your mid-20s because you spent all your teen years beating it. You sick human. But you can't sit here and expect rational conversation from the public anymore. It's impossible. You're not going to find it unless you only go in certain sections to where you know for certain people are going to speak to you rationally and normally. And when you take away someone's ability to goon, they're going to be very upset about that. And there's going to be that backward savage conversation about, well, since you're restricting me of my ability to touch myself, why don't we bring these whores in and talk about how they need to stop doing things? It wouldn't lead to anything productive. It would just be what happened, a fucking circus for you being the person to spearhead the conversation about how it's bad that all the blame's going towards the women. So let's come up with an idea to stop masturbation. And while some people will be in the category of, hey, masturbation is bad, making it unlawful, we'll just have a bunch of people sending you death threats, which I don't endorse, I do not co-sign, I do not support, because that's low IQ, low brow effort in the conversation. However, that's what you expected, and that's what you got once you try to take away people's right to goon. And that is unlawful. The goonicide brought people together, and all you're doing is trying to tear us all apart. I think that's enough of the word goon for now. Subscribe to the channel. Let me know what you think about your right to goon being taken away from you. Put the cocoa butter down, and I will see you in the next one. Mwah. Goodbye. Are you telling me that I have to go to jail for this? Are you telling me I have to go to jail for this?